Hey everyone, and welcome to another movie review, more specifically a horror movie, The First Omen. I'm not very big into horror genre. My favorite horror movie of all time is The Exorcist, and my favorite modern horror director is by far Robert Eggers. Like, both of his horror movies are great, although his best movie, The Northman, is actually not a horror, and I'm so much looking forward to Nosferatu of his. And also, I do think like older horror movies tend to be really good. Like, the original Omen is quite good, although it has some problems. We'll get to it in this review actually, but they're more personal than with any of the actual filmmaking. And we'll explore it all in actually this review too. And also, another more modern horror that I quite like is It, both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. But generally, I'm not quite into horror genre, and I do think that many horror movies, especially modern ones, are really cheesy, and they aren't scary or anything. They're just silly, cheesy, and so yeah, I generally tend not to like them. But here is my review of The First Omen, a recent movie in the Omen franchise. And because I was hearing quite good things about it, so plus it's also for you guys, so I decided why not go and see it. And what I think of the movie? Well, it was quite scary, like a horror movie should be, and I did like it at some parts, but also I do think that it was in some ways anti-Catholic, and I'm a Catholic myself. I probably said it a couple times on this channel. I generally don't like discussing religion on this channel, but unfortunately in the review of this movie it's quite unavoidable but we'll get to the anti-Catholics element later. First, let's talk about what I did like actually in the movie. So, the main character of The First Omen is this American woman, Margaret, who travels to Rome to work in a Catholic orphanage, and there she befriends this girl, Carlita, who's actually considered by nuns a bad girl and is constantly punished and abused, and Margaret is the only one that actually chooses to befriend her and help her, but then she soon realizes something much more sinister is actually going on. And if you've seen the First Omen movie from the 70s, then we very well know what this is. And the positive I think of this movie is I really like the relationship, friendship and chemistry between Margaret and Carlita. I think this was very well done, and both are actually quite likable and very well done characters with multiple layers to them. So that's, for example, among other things that I did like in this movie. And I also like the overall atmosphere of the movie, because as I've been saying, modern horror movies tend not to be scary or creepy, but I did get a quite creepy and scary atmosphere from this movie, kind of like from The First Omen. This movie is technically The First Omen, but I meant original Omen from the 70s, but it can get confusing. So yes, I did get quite some scary and creepy vibes of this movie, especially at the ending, just like I did from the original Omen. And I also really like the overall feeling of the movie, because it truly feels like a movie in the 70s. I mean, with better special effects, 21st century special effects, but the overall tone, atmosphere, you totally feel like the 70s. Simply with 21st century special effects. So that's another credit I have to give. But now let's get to the anti-Catholic part. Something I'm not comfortable discussing, but in this movie it's really unavoidable, because I think there unfortunately is quite an anti-Catholic bias out there. Although, to be fair, the original Omen from the 70s also had some anti-Catholic bias, because the main character of that movie, Rupert Thorne, was an evangelical Christian who realized his son was an antichrist and was born as a result of a conspiracy within the Catholic Church. And in the 70s and 80s and 60s too, there was a gigantic, and especially even more before that, but in the 70s it was also very huge. There was a gigantic anti-Catholic bias within the evangelical circles. I'm glad it's now dying, but back then it was huge, and plenty of evangelicals actually believed that Catholic Church is in league with the Antichrist.
Give me a break.
And the movie was made in the 70s, so it's understandable. And in this movie, the anti-Catholic bias, I say, is even more blatant, but this time, instead of an evangelical perspective, it's clear that it's more from a secular perspective, especially that there is one priest that's good and says to Margaret that the Catholic Church will oppose anything that's secular, and they specifically want to give birth to the Antichrist because people are turning away from the church and they want people to get back to the church. Yep. There is clear anti-Catholic bias in this movie, and there is some more, but I will not get any more into it. It kind of makes me uncomfortable, and I'm not particularly comfortable talking about religion on this channel. So yes, there is more, but I'm no longer getting into it. That's all I have to say on the subject. But overall, I quite liked the First Omen for the most part. It was pretty scary, creepy, had an interesting story, a likable main character, but unfortunately the anti-Catholic bias is very strong for me. But overall, I thought it was a quite scary horror movie, and if you aren't Catholic, then it probably won't matter to you anyway. But those are my thoughts on the First Omen. And thank you all of you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later. Bye.